Jimmy Carter spoke at the Carter Center with Bernie Sanders a few days back, and I selected a little clip. Let's take a look at it, and then we'll talk about it.
Both explain the rise of authoritarianism. What's this coming from?
Well, I think the root of it is something that I haven't heard discussed much. I told a group today that in 1999, at the end of the last millennium, in the beginning of 2000, I was asked to make speeches in Oslo, Norway, and also in Taiwan. And my subject was, what is the greatest challenge to be faced by the next century? And I said the disparity between rich people and poor people. And I think that is the case not only between people who live in a country, but also between nations. And I believe that the root of a downturn in human rights preceded 2016. It began earlier than that. And I think the reason was the disparity in income, which has been translated into the average person, good, decent, hardworking, middle-class people, feeling that they are getting cheated by the government and by society. And they don't get the same element of health care. They don't get the same quality education. They don't get the same political rights, particularly after the stupid decision of the Supreme Court on Citizens United, where they said that it's an unlimited amount of money going into campaigns. But now they feel that even in politics, their choice of a candidate to be president or governor or congressman or whoever is not the same as a rich person's. And also, once that candidate gets in office, if he's successful, quite often the average person feels that they are repaying their contributions with legal bribery, and it's legal. And the justice system has also gone down. Long before we had this last election, when I left the White House, for instance, 1 out of 1,000 people were in prison. Now, 7 people out of 1,000 are in prison. 7 times as many people who are Americans are now in prison as they were just when I left the White House. So the feeling of an average person that I'll be treated fairly by the justice system is missing. So, basic human rights, income, status in society, health care, education, participation in politics, justice, the things in which we used to have complete faith now have been distorted by the rich people getting richer and the poor people getting poorer. And when the rich people get a candidate in office, they can be sure that the tax laws and everything else are going to keep them getting richer and richer, but the average person suffers. So I think that dissatisfaction with the existing system of politics resulted in the outcome of the election in 2016 in the United States. People were willing just to take a chance and to abandon democracy and what we know about is basic principles and try something new, no matter what it was.
So there you go. Jimmy Carter, the original Bernie Sanders. A lot of bad things have been said about Jimmy Carter in the past, and we have such a selective memory, it just boggles my mind. Look, I am by no means going to agree with everything that Jimmy Carter did. I mean, his economic policy was a little bit on the soft side. But you have to also keep in mind where we were as a country. When he was elected, it was right after the Vietnam War, 2 years outside of Nixon being impeached and waving his hand away, watching Gerald Ford fall down the stairs of Air Force One a half a dozen times. We were kind of ashamed of ourselves, and we went in a direction that was completely different. We went with this Christian peanut farmer, and the man still has. Let's just talk about that for a few minutes, okay? He was a young guy He started off with nothing, his family, very poor family, and he built himself a peanut empire. That's capitalism right there. That's the American dream. That guy accomplished a hell of a lot. He was soft-spoken, and he never fired a shot, okay? I think there was a couple of military actions, not military actions, I believe, and of course there was the Iranian hostage crisis that was going on there towards the end of his presidency. And I have no doubt that if that had not happened, he would have been reelected president in 1980, and it would not have been Ronald Reagan. Recently, I had a conversation with a couple of friends of mine about the chaos theory and how, if this didn't happen, then this wouldn't have happened, and we would all be in a better place. Look, that's all well and good, and it's very well possible that things would have been different, but who knows? I'm not going to sit here and talk paradox with you. But my point is that what has Jimmy Carter done since he's been president? Okay? We talk about all these other presidential candidates and what they've done while they were in office, but you look at them and what have they done afterwards? I mean, recently we had this issue, it's not an issue, it's just a conversation point came up about Barack Obama accepting $400,000 for a speech at an investment bank. I'm not going to get too deep into that because that's definitely a topic for another time. On the other hand, what has George Bush done since he's been out of office?
He finger paints.
He finger paints. Does he? That's right, he does. He's not bad. I've seen some of his work, for a president, not too bad, He likes to finger his paintings. It's terrible. What did George Bush Sr. do? What did Ronald Reagan do after they were out of office? I mean, really, what did Bill Clinton? He forgot a lot of stuff. Well, that's okay. He had Nancy beside him telling him, they were doing like palm readings and shit like that. But what have they done? What have these presidents done since they've gotten out of office? Well, I can tell you some of the things that Jimmy Carter did. He went on a one-man mission against I believe it was the Getty worm. It was this worm in Africa that was killing people from drinking, from their drinking water. It was in their drinking water, and it was this parasite, and it was killing people. And all it took was a filter. Jimmy Carter came up with, along with some scientists, of course, came up with this filter and brought it all around Africa, showed people how to use it, and he has since basically eradicated that worm. Nobody dies from it anymore because of Jimmy Carter. He was on HUD, Housing and Urban Development. He's always about Habitats for Humanity. He's really gotten involved in his community, and he wants to do things to better humanity and mankind. I mean, the guy is a really good guy. It's hard not to watch him and not feel, wow, man, I wish we had a president like that. Well, we could have. He was sitting right next to him in that clip I just showed you. Jimmy Carter believed that Americans should lead by example and not by an iron fist. He was the guy that put solar panels on the White House. Back in the 70s, it was when they first started talking about climate change. And he listened because that was back in the day when people actually believed scientists. When scientists came to you with, a scientific principle or a theory or a study that they had done, they were revered and they were listened to back in those days. Wow. Seems like forever ago. But they talked about it back in the 70s, and one of the first things he did was put solar panels on the White House. And one of the first things that Ronald Reagan did when he got there was take them off. Way to lead from behind. Republicans always talk about, and it's one of their talking points, leading from behind. We are allowing the entire planet to get ahead of us on green technology because we're still in the denial phase about climate change. We're still fighting wars that don't need to be fought. And then you have a leader like Jimmy Carter, who never fired a shot. And not just that, but one of the things that I really like about him is that he is not afraid to look at his mistakes, and he will call himself on his mistakes. He says that if I could have just had one more helicopter, this is woulda, coulda, shoulda. It's in the past and there's nothing I can do about it, but that was one of my regrets, is that I didn't send an extra helicopter in to get those hostages. He sent in one. If he just sent in a second one, he feels like it would have been a more successful, and probably he might be right. He might be right. And he says he feels that he would have been reelected if it hadn't have been for that incident. And I believe he's right in that respect too. But he does not blame anybody else. He blames himself. He takes it on himself. And this is the kind of leadership that we need. Somebody that really cares about mankind and not about corporate dollars. And that's what we're stuck with right now. One side that takes corporate money and talks platitudes, and the other side who pretended to be a populist and told you all the lies that you wanted to hear, and you believed him, and he turns out he is just as establishment as any other Republican candidate. I had a little back and forth on a social media site recently with several Democrats, and they are fighting amongst themselves still to this day. They need to realize that they are closer together on their points than they are further apart. Not just Democrats and other Democrats, but Democrats and Republicans as well. We have this identity politics these days where people just automatically say, I'm a conservative, so I'm going to vote for this other conservative. But if you talk to them about progressive policy points, and you don't frame it as a progressive policy point, you just give them a policy point. And, you lay out the benefits for like Medicare for all or a higher education, more affordable education. Conservatives are nodding their head. Yes, I like very much. These are good things because we're closer together than we think. It's just that you have this identity politics going on in mainstream media, and your politicians just screaming ballot at one another, pretending like they're so far apart, but they're not. They are only far apart on where they're going to get their money. But you, as a voter, I'm reaching across the aisle to my friends and family who are labeling themselves as conservative to just look at some of the policy points that I talk about. And if you don't agree with me, I'd be happy to talk with you. If you don't want to talk with me, I understand. That's fine. You don't have to. But the policy points that I'm talking about, you are a lot closer to than you think you are. And when I see two Democrats going at each other about purity this and, and you need to accept this and fall in line and shut up and shut it Bernie bros and, when I see Democrats fighting amongst themselves, it hurts my feelings because you guys are closer together than you think. I'm not saying that nothing has to be done about the Democrats, because when I listen to Nancy Pelosi and she just run her mouth saying, oh, nothing has to change, we're just going to wait out Donald Trump and then we're going to slide back into power. Not having had changed a fucking thing. That kind of stuff makes me mad. But when I see two of my friends fighting about it, it upsets me because I know that they are closer together than they know, that they think that they are. We all want the same things. It was the Medicare for all conversation versus the ACA, the Affordable Care Act. It's like, okay, well, we have this now. We can't get rid of it. And then the progressive side is saying we're not going to get rid of it. We're just going to expand Medicaid. And then the establishment Democratic person is like, well, you can't do that because we don't have the Republican backing. We didn't have the Republican backing when Obama passed the ACA. That was all Democratic Senate and House majority. That's how that got passed. We need to get money out of politics to change all that because they're always going to be for their donors, Democrats and Republicans alike. Jimmy Carter talks about a lot of things, but he backs it up in his action. He doesn't believe in corporate money. He believes that this country has been taken over by a corporate oligarchy. And he's not wrong. They buy our politicians. The politicians write laws in favor of those people, and the little guy gets screwed. Their job gets shipped overseas. Their health care gets defunded or taken away from them. Their education gets lessened in quality and more expensive, whether it be tax dollars or charter schools. Only time will tell how Jimmy Carter is viewed in the future. But as far as I'm concerned, he was a good man with a hell of a lot of quality. And that's something that we are sorely missing in our representatives. Quality. Hey, this is Antoinette from Transistor Rodeo. If you like what you saw here, please subscribe for more videos and content, and you could follow me on Twitter at Transistor Rodeo.